明天我看明天的，看到1、2、2，还没有明天了是吧？有没有明天的？
尊敬的各位来宾，接下来我们将进入1.7扬帆出海中国企业的大航海时代环节，有请主持人及嘉宾上台。We will now start the Sailing into the Blue Chinese Enterprise Age of Discovery. Let's welcome the moderator and the speakers to the stage.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, this session is actually much awaited about in today's very fragmented world, in this geopolitical issue era, how the Chinese enterprises are heading to. Where is the overseas and what's the overseas, new blue, new ocean for the Chinese enterprises? 所以我们这一场谈中国。
That is why we are dedicating this session to the direction overseas for the Chinese enterprises. And in previous sessions, we discussed about many other issues. However, in this session, we're focusing on the overseas direction for Chinese enterprises. We have a wonderful array of speakers for this session.
This session in both English and Chinese. I would like to introduce the panelist of this session. The gentleman sitting beside me is the IFF board member, former Deputy Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, the former governor of Astana International Financial Center, Mr. Karat Kalimbetov. Welcome. And also we have the IFF Vice Chair, former Financial Secretary of the Hong Kong SAR, CEO of Nanfeng Group, Mr. Anthony Leong. Welcome, Leong. And also we have IFF Vice President, former Secretary of Economy and Finance of Macau Special Administrative Region, Mr. Leong Wei-Chai. And also we have the Managing Director of Fullerton Funds Management Singapore, former Vice President of Invest Sweden Agency, Mr. Eddie Chen. Well, first of all, I will start from the newly elected US President Donald Trump and his cooperation with the technology giant Elon Musk. So in today's time and era, so how do you see the impact of Donald Trump? If I give you a score from 0 to 10, if nowadays the Chinese enterprise wants to go to the United States, what score would you give? I would like to start from you.
Thank you. I think so. We should think about what the new administration in the U.S. gonna propose in a bilateral relationship and in a global context. But I think it's a part of the big global picture, which is kind of the mega trends which we should expect, and definitely is two very important mega trends. One is the geopolitical turmoil, so some people call it uncertainty, including U.S.-China trade tension. So currently tariff war, maybe later on currency war. So it's from cycle to cycle happened in the global economy. And number two is the technological advancement and tech race, especially in artificial intelligence area. So I think in these terms, so we are living or we are entering into the time of protectionism. So probably will be big tension, discussions, And in this terms, so from one side, is a huge challenge for newcomers from the Chinese market to US market or to EU market. It's like a free biggest economy globally. From the other side, I think it will open new opportunities. So maybe new destinations for Chinese business community, south to within China, within Asia, or China within neighborhood countries, including Kazakhstan. So I'm more optimistic about this.
Okay, we can see definitely challenges, but also there are opportunities. So how about you, Mr. Liang?
Well, thank you. Glad to be on this very distinguished panel. I believe instead of giving a single rating, we should look at the macro view. Compared to President Trump's first term, the world has changed quite a bit. I mean, if we look at the contribution or the proportion of GDP of the G7, it has been reduced significantly. So while the US is still a very important market, we should look at the world as much bigger than the G7. And regardless of whether it's President Trump or another candidate, the US is poised to suppress China. I mean, we have seen in their history, they would somehow like to suppress whoever that can challenge them. And right now it's China. But in the past, they have suppressed other Western countries as well. So I think Chinese corporations should be prepared for an era that is different from what we have experienced in the past. And I can see that with the Chinese companies having the capability through internal competition within China, now have the capability as well as the competitive strength to go outside. And that's why I've been telling my friends in the next 5 to 10 years, it will be another tidal wave, probably a new tidal wave of Chinese companies going overseas.
Okay, thank you. And also, Mr. Yang, I will pass the phone to you.
Okay, thank you so much. First, I fully agree with Anthony, who is my mentor. And of course, no matter who is in charge in America, well, the only thing they agree is how they tackle on China. There's no doubt about it. But if you really want me to give a score about this, how to justify this, well, I would say a score of 5 when I'm wearing the hat of as an entrepreneur and businessman. If I'm wearing a hat as a politician or ex-government official, then I would say score of 5 with tolerance of 5. That means 0 to 10. Okay. Well, because why I'm saying this is nowadays politics is a swing. You can swing from very extreme left to very extreme right. So your question is future. That really depends on what kind of future talk about, a near future, a long future, or what? So, well, if we consider a historical future, well, I would say 5 because 5 is the medium between 0 and 10. So someday it swing to the left, someday it swing to the right. But fully agree, well, it's not easy days, this era. And how can we prepare for it? Well, definitely, I believe you have following questions that is going to ask us. So just leave it to your questions so I can answer it later. Thank you.
Okay, so score 5 is really a tricky answer. So we have the guest speakers from Kazakhstan, from Hong Kong, from Macau, and also from Singapore. So Eddie, what's your score?
Yeah, I'm very much agree with the speakers earlier, the comments. I think both parties, no matter who is on the stage, it's unanimously they wanted to compete with China in a big time. But however, based on what we heard so far, when the new administration going to be on the stage by January 1st next year, I would think the score will not be high. If the current administration the score is not high anyway. If I give 4, then next year I think I'll be lower by 1, maybe 3. So the reason I say this is that at least based on the current information, what we've been hearing from all the campaign language or after campaign, by seeing the new cabinets going to be on board, doesn't look great. Going to be very challenged to China and particularly to Chinese companies thinking about doing businesses in the US. So technology, capital market, CFIUS are going to be tightened up even furthermore, I think. Listing in NASDAQ or listing in NYSE going to be impossible, perhaps will be very limited. So it's going to be much more challenge. But on the other hand, I also hear lots of discussion already talking about, the new administration could be thinking about business on the other hand. So if you find a way to deal with them, satisfy the business requirement, creating jobs in the US, maybe you have another opportunity. I don't know, perhaps. So, it's too early to make any kind of a prediction. I don't think any time nowadays we can't predict anymore. Look at the last couple of years, what's going on. But at least I felt that the new administration in the US, to begin with, it's going to be looks much more challenging than before. But perhaps behind the scene, maybe there is other opportunities may pop up. So we have to be agile as a businessman, as a Chinese company. Unless you don't want to do anything, you want to stuck here back home. Unless you want to do something, you have to really be agile. You have to be sharp. You have to be kind of like a politician, think like a politician to see what's going on and adjusting your strategy and operation. So it's a timing. It's a time for everybody is going to be requires a very, very new mindset and strategy. So I think it's a lot more to do, a lot more to wait to see.
Okay, so Carrot, you want to respond to this?
I just would like maybe to bring some background. So we are now talking about a little bit emotional perception because of uncertainty. So probably during the election, the rhetoric was to do this or not to do this. But let's come back to very beginning. So when was, for example, Cold War between Soviet Union and United States? So the situation was like quite dangerous and difficult. But at the same time, as has been mentioned, role those time of OECD club or G7 countries in economy was much bigger. So currently it's a little bit different after the opening up reforms in China. So US and China become very much interconnected. And even it will be like a bigger tariffs or whatever. So besides absolute terms, cooperation between US and China is huge. So definitely it will be tech, let's say, race, and it would be probably some restriction in terms of the AI development. But in general, I think the trade would be only increased from one side. From the other side, the responsibility of US and China in the global security system, in the global trade system would be increased. And I think that a lot of cooperation between these two countries. And if we will come back again, Cold War time, when was created the current globalization system, always Bretton Woods institution, IMF, WTO, World Bank. So I think China supports it very much. China entered to WTO. China playing the same rules. And again, remember when was President Xi visited the World Economic Forum, he said he is behind the back for further globalization. But for globalization, I think now is the time, a little bit like maybe a slowdown in terms of the rate of globalization, or some people call it regionalization, and it's normal. It's normal competition, and I think that we should perceive it less emotional.
Thank you. But okay, this is just the first question. We can already see the difference and also the agreement. We can see the emotional side. We can see the facts and interpretations. And also we can see the emotions and sometimes narratives, right? When we see when the Chinese companies go to United States, maybe it's dangerous. But as Mr. Leong said, the world is big enough, okay? But for the industries or companies, they have the different backgrounds, they have a different entities, different, talents, right? Let's see, the 3 new industries, such as the new EV, the lithium batteries and the photovoltaics. These are the big giants that are going abroad today. And also we have the cross-border e-commerce. Okay, now in China, for the domestic company, they have a saying, 不出海就出局。如果说世界足够大, if the world is big enough, if the United States is dangerous, okay, we can go elsewhere, but United States have the, allies, right? And also there is a narrative saying that the China is not investable. So from the point of view of the Chinese enterprise, if they want to go abroad today, where is the first step? Where's the first stop? What's your view on that?
First stop is definitely Kazakhstan. I think I would like to remind 2 great initiatives which was done by China and presidency particularly. The first one was done in Kazakhstan, that's why I mentioned it, which it's restoring the ancient Silk Road, which in China you call Belt and Road, so very well known globally, Belt and Road Initiative. In spite of many critics in the Western community, I think it was a great idea about all types of connectivity, transport connectivity, digital connectivity, energy connectivity. And I think in these terms, as we joke in Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan is a buckle of the belt, let's say, and which we try to connect to biggest global economy, European economy and Chinese economy. So, and, if we talk about not only Central Asia dimension, but also the maritime dimension, this is all about how to connect this part of Asia with Latin America, with Africa, with the Middle East, with Southeast Asia. I think this is very much important, especially as been mentioned, the gravity of Asia in terms of the size of the GDP is increasing. And this gravity would be increased because of the urbanization, demographics, etc. The second initiative, which just to remind you, if you remember, is President Xi announced this global internet, energy internet initiative, which is again try to connect different energy smart grids within the countries and across the countries. So again, here is a few initiatives: renewable energy, innovations, information, AI, robotics. So many initiatives which is China can really share their capacity, share the knowledge, share the experience. And again, this is something which we all looking for. As I mentioned, South trade, Asia within connectivity, many other markets. So they are all stops which were already Chinese company are coming, and I think that they have to continue it.
Thank you, Mr. Carrot. Mr. Leung.
Well, I would like to again bring back the kind of to the broader picture because you seem to be fixated on Donald Trump, US and China relationship. And as I said in my first remarks, the world is a much bigger world. And secondly, I would like to believe that there are cultural differences between, say, the Western way of thinking and the Chinese way of thinking. I often tell my friend that in the Western world, when they play chess, the Western chess is a game of win-lose. Whereas the Chinese, we play Go, which is more a game of gaining influence. And I would like to think that in the real world, we gain influence not by suppressing others or attacking others, but to win more friends through common values and the principle of mutual benefit. And to a certain extent, some other people would think about, say, the Western way of boxing versus Chinese way of Tai Chi, which is not kind of hitting very hard, but somehow using ways to take away the forces. So where to go, in a way, it depends on a lot of things, because unlike the three sectors that you talk about, the EV, solar panel, and say batteries, as we all know, there are a lot of small and medium, particularly medium Chinese enterprises that actually have gone overseas and are going overseas, to the vicinity countries for manufacturing of all kinds. So when we think about where should the Chinese corporations go, first of all, it depends on your purpose, your business goals and objective. Are you seeking market expansion, resource acquisition, cost reduction, brand building, or technological advancement? And all of these actually differ in terms of where you should be going. Obviously, the more generic issues is like market potential, economic and trade relationship with the countries that you're going to, regulatory environment, cultural and language compatibility, geographic proximity, political and economic stability, local partnerships and network, cost considerations, reputation and branding. So it really depends on which industry you're in, what are your purposes of going abroad. And we have seen a lot of the first destinations such as Southeast Asia, developed economies, Africa, Belt and Road countries, including Kazakhstan. So I think it should, the Chinese enterprises should start with a market that aligns with the core strengths, that minimizes the risks, offers a clear path of growth. Clearly, one has to conduct very thorough research, leverage government resources such as the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, and to that extent, Hong Kong can play a role because Hong Kong, we have economic and trade officers as well as offices of our Trade Development Council in more than 30 countries around the world. And also consider working with local consultants and local partners to kind of enable a smooth entry. So these are very generic, but I'm sure, as I said in my first remarks, I see the next 5 to 10 years is really a new wave and in a way a tidal wave of Chinese corporations going abroad. And as you said, 可能不出海就出局，但是出海了也可能出局。
But sometimes, going overseas might prove not safe. So we should go overseas, but without having any accident.
Thank you so much for the question, and fully agree with Anthony, because I remember during March in Ball Asia Forum, and there's a kind of a dialogue between Chinese enterprise and EU enterprise. The first sentence I said is EU is big, China is big, but the world is bigger. Well, wearing a hat as a formal Macau government officials, I remember the last day I worked in Macau government, I have the honor that introduced about Portuguese-speaking country to President Xi Jinping. And then I told him we should consider 3 paths. Okay, one is China, Macau, and then Portugal, EU. The second path is China, Macau, Brazil, Latin America. The third route is China, Macau, Africa, Mozambique, Africa. Okay, so this is the head of the formal secretary of Macau SL government. And wearing a hat as a businessman, I would like to share with you audience about a case that I personally participate in. And I have the honor that I participate in a company which is the biggest construction company publicly in EU, like the biggest construction company in Portugal. And then one of the state-owned enterprise acquired 32% of this company, but the Portuguese family still own 38%. Okay, and then I would like to share with you about some figures. Okay, that is happening by 2022, and then they invite me and also by the General Assembly of the shareholder to be one of the director. The turnover of this company grew 47% in 2022 and 46% in 2023 comparing to 2022. EBITDA growth 31% at the year of 2022 and 55% growth in 2023. Net profit growth 86% in 2022 and also 176% in the year of 2023. Those are amazing figures. The most attractive figures that draw our eyes is actually it's a Portuguese company that I just mentioned, and then a Chinese state-owned enterprise that they bought certain share. But among all our annual performance, only 11% are from Europe, 0% are from China, and 27% are from Africa, and 50% are from Latin America. So that proves that my answer to your question, what is the best first stop? To me, first stop is never your final destination. If you are targeting at the world, your first stop is the place that you can find your most suitable strategic partner, that we can sail together to get the whole world's market. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. We've talked about 不出海就出局，但是出海有可能。
Yeah, sometimes, without going overseas, you will be out of the game. But in other cases, when you go overseas, you might come across accidents. So it's not safe. So we need to go overseas without encountering accidents. Now, when we're talking about going overseas, today versus yesterday, it's a different story. According to Mr. Leung from Macau, he has talked about the best way of going overseas. He has offered us a new perspective. The question is for Mr. Chen. You have lots of experience for investment interaction between China and other countries. What about Chinese companies going overseas now? Eddie Chen.
Good question. So to make myself clear, I believe that the Chinese enterprises must continue their global strategy and operations, which have been already lasted for the last 20 years. It's not today. It's been a long time ago already. But what's happening today is they're facing a new challenge, which the new challenge and the difficulties are mainly contributed by geopolitical impact and tension. So that's clear. As a Chinese company, if you lose your drive or motivation to go global, to expand your business to new markets, to to seeking for the opportunities, I'm sure sooner or later you're going to be marginalized. Particularly if your peer competitor, they continue their globalization. If you don't, so as I said, in Chinese way, say 躺平.
There's a Chinese analogy, lying flat.
Always be there. And I just share with my first part of my career path, I was an IT specialist. I studied computer science, undergraduate. So my first job was a programmer, right? Then I became a chief technical officer, chief information officer of a very large UN organization in New York. Think about that. 30 years ago, when the first generation, or what we call the first IT start to penetrate to the industry, to our life. Think of that, 30 years ago, the top 10 largest ICT company, information and communication technology company, how many of them are still there here today? Think of 10 years, 20 years ago, the 10 largest, how many of them are here today? So I would say business always competes. If not because market reason, could be other reasons. So don't be afraid of competition. So now certainly we know many Chinese companies are inexperienced in dealing with what so-called geopolitical intention because it happens too sudden, too fast, not prepared yet. but don't be afraid. Deal with it, because that's the only way for you to continue to grow your business. So that's point number one. Now, if I maybe say following few points in Chinese, because I know lots of audiences out there is Chinese enterprises. 但是呢，我认为今天的这个中国
Well, that said, for the challenges confronting Chinese companies going overseas, we require a new mindset to cope with them. There's a lack of new mindset itself is not sufficient. We need to have a new strategy. But strategy and mindset alone are not enough. We need to have a new business model. And ultimately, we shall come up with new competencies or new core competitiveness. In order to build all that, you've got to learn a lot more. Traditionally speaking, Chinese companies have quite a coarse, granular understanding of the global economy, of the global picture, the other markets. Going forward, we've got to understand deeper and better the destination markets by leveraging technology innovations in a much more effective way. And the sustainability element is also very important because net zero is becoming more and more important in many of the destination markets. Green tech should be one of the focused areas. For Chinese companies, the question we should ask is how to go overseas in a more effective and efficient way to cope with the challenges we're having.
The location, the choice of location, I very much agree with Mr. Liang. There is no best location. There is only optimal at this moment for your business, for your strategy. It evolves. Today you can go to Southeast Asia, and then you target for Middle East. Then you have expand to Central and North, Central and South America or Africa. So I think it's a part of the U.S. strategy. But however, I must say, since I'm now work here based in Singapore, ASEAN, Southeast Asia has become a hot location nowadays, starting 3-4 years ago after COVID. Many, I wouldn't say much, so many, too many Chinese companies are going there, feel that it's going to be a very good location. I do agree, it's a good location to thinking about your business for your international business outside of China. But however, I would still suggest the Chinese company that do not having a single strategy. You have to really think carefully. It's just a momentarily scenario. Nowadays, yes, go to Singapore. Yesterday you were in Hong Kong, right? Or in Macau. Today you're in Singapore. So it doesn't matter. It's a part of your business decision. So sooner or later you may change. So I say life circles by itself. Business will do the same thing. So confident. You have to have confidence. You have the confidence that Chinese enterprises, Chinese business, they are good enough to play in a global stage, global environment. So, but you need a different way of doing business. That's how it should be. That's no matter what, you have to be that way anyway.
Okay, first stop is not the destination actually. So Hong Kong, Macau, and Singapore, and how about Kazakhstan? Also today, Middle East, Dubai is also a very hot place.
Yes, so let me also maybe respond to some particular statements. So I fully agree with this philosophical idea that the playing in Go is something like win-win strategy rather than zero-sum game in chess, which was also being created in Asia, in India. But I think I like the famous joke about this, that when the Chinese colleagues tell him win-win means China wins twice. And and I think, so in these terms, what Chinese company should do when they will go globally, they have to build trust among the stakeholders where they are going. And I think that this is very important. It's quite difficult, but I think it's achievable. In terms of the first stop, what I mean about Kazakhstan and is it destination or not destination? I think in a certain phase it's really destination, because the China should pilot how China will cooperate with other countries. And here it should be trust again, and trust built on common values and benefits for two sides. So in Kazakhstan, for example, if we started from cooperation on energy security, for example, in Kazakhstan, 25% of oil and gas production belongs to Chinese company. So currently, we are more talking about cooperation in AI, in e-commerce, in technologies, in innovations. And this is something which really helping to build trust. So I think in these terms, this strategic relationship between Kazakhstan and China can help to China to develop the same relationship in other countries. In terms of the kind of current deep cooperation between China and ASEAN. So I think we should think also about like a golden triangle, which is the Middle East, Middle Asia, and or Central Asia we call it, and ASEAN. So within this, I think a lot should be done in terms of all types of connectivity infrastructure. I know that the monetary authorities of Singapore, Hong Kong, sorry, are working on infrastructure financing facility hub. So this is also very important for building right infrastructure. And back, how, let's say, China or Asia should move to this and what role should be here? I think two very important tasks. So one is like engagement of the international financial centers. And I think Hong Kong is and Singapore are good examples of this. Common law jurisdiction, the risk-based supervision, trust of the investors, and at the same time, let's say, access to the huge liquidity from mainland China. So I think this is something which is for global borrowers and global investors are very much interesting. And I think the global financial center should continue this role. In Kazakhstan, jointly with other global financial centers, we built Astana International Financial Center, which is also one country, two system principle, where we have a common law, we have an independent court system, and we have a huge presence of the Chinese institutions. All big top 5 Chinese banks like CCB, like ICBC, Bank of China have a presence. The Shanghai Stock Exchange is a shareholder of a local stock exchange. And when we start to build it, we start to realize that should be role of renminbi, of further deeper internationalization of renminbi. This is something which we can pilot in Kazakhstan very deeply and then spread it around the world.
So we can definitely see the US election will affect the international situation and the global supply chain system, but the general trend of the Chinese companies going overseas will not change. And also the overseas strategies of the Chinese companies already shifting from the traditional labor intensive to the technology intensive industries. But like Mr. Chen just mentioned, the domestic Chinese industry companies are facing very competitive, very fierce competition, and also the disruption of the supply chains, which we call 内卷，以及很多中国
call it infighting sometimes.
If the overseas environment is too fierce, is too, unfriendly, so I choose not to go abroad. I just stay in China. So will it work if I, rely only on the large domestic market? Will that work? So this question I will pass to the Anthony and also Mr. Liang and also Mr. Chen.
因为你问这个问题是可能是跟中国企业有什么
This question
应对的方法
is about whether Chinese businesses will respond it.
环境大家都知道是
As we know, China has a rat race environment. That's why we say in the coming years, globalization will be a very big wave. Globalization of Chinese businesses. This is today's topic. You asked if we don't go global, how should we respond? I think each enterprise is in the different industry. It depends on your industry. I actually started one business in healthcare. This sector is quite associated with mainland China. Because of the aging population, there are opportunities, and also per capita income is increasing. People would want longevity when they are rich. Of course, it depends on your sectors. Let's go back to globalization. I agree that this is a win-win, multiple win. Chinese firms can do well, and local economies can benefit. In addition, it also promotes prosperity and also peace in the world. We also should consider how to respond to climate change. We should not only think about our own country, our own business, but also think about the local economy, local environment, and also human progress. In this area, SMEs also have experience. It depends on your own needs, whether we are talking about Hong Kong or Singapore. Especially in the United States, U.S. is in the atmosphere of isolation. What does Hong Kong do? Hong Kong can help the Chinese firms and the global companies to get connected. Previously, the United States closed SWIFT system for one country. Whether Hong Kong can facilitate the global payment system to avoid that blockage or risk. FMA and also have been considering together with other central banks, that is another payment system. Other central banks have also got involved. RMB is now being used in more places, not only in China. But in the short term or midterm, it's hard to have a free exchange of RMB. It means we have two pools, domestic and offshore. The biggest hub for offshore RMB is Hong Kong. Hong Kong should shoulder the responsibility to promote RMB internationalization. Hong Kong should develop itself into an offshore RMB asset management center. In addition, Hong Kong is probably the only place that hosts 5 top 100 universities in the world. To help the globalization of Chinese firms, traditionally, we know very well about the United States and Europe. But in the future, the global South has bigger market share and increasing part of the global GDP. That's why the Hong Kong universities should also develop the talent who knows about the global South and making business investment, etc. How to interact with mainlanders. Chinese universities should also think about this, how we can develop more people to help the Chinese firms, especially to go global, especially with the global South areas. In the Hong Kong universities are collaborating with international universities on global South and academic programs, etc. Hong Kong should have the capability. In the coming several years, Well, I think there's a negative sentiment about China in the United States. Some American and European scholars would like to do research and work in Hong Kong. That's the opportunity for Hong Kong to develop our own financial center, and especially offshore RMB. In addition, to develop the education.
谢谢
Thank you.
梁先生。
是亮。
我想我的答案是分
My
两个
answer
角度。第一个角度
takes
如
two
果是供应
perspectives.
链
If you are a
如果
supply
在
chain,
全球这么多的地缘政治这么多情
due
况下
to the geopolitical tensions,
前一个 single base 就是大
you
家
cannot have only a single pace. You have to
或者
change.
说是 globalization 其实更
You
接
should
近
have
globalization 就是
go
全球化
globalization.
就是全球市场怎么生产在地，这个我们必须要想清
So
楚。
how
实际上
you should have a clear
变化
map,
还
clear
有另外一
idea.
个 keyword 就是
Another keyword
就是
is
multi base 就是
multi
多
base,
基地多生产的基地，
multi
另外一个是
manufacturing base,
multi talent
multi
就是你的
talent.
工作队伍，你的工作班
Your
底有没
workforce
有给予他
should have a diverse
multitask
background.
就是多
You should
功
give
能
them
训练，
multitask
让他们能够根据，
so
因
that
为我们供应链出现新问
because
题，有时
there
候
are
一些
arising
添
problems
加药
with
物
the
还
supply
有
chain,
我们这 COVID-19 等等的东西
COVID-19 and
这些
others.
情况下，我们需要
We need
调整一下我
to
们
make
有关
adjustment
的这个供应链的这
to
个
the
运
supply
行
chain.
就这个 flow。所
The
以我觉得
flow.
就是从供应链这个角度，当然这个
Of
伟大的
course,
成本，也某
it
程度上
brings
带来了
costs
通货膨胀。
and
这是
inflation.
全球必须要面对还有
This
长
is
期受苦
something
的
the
事
whole
情。
world
那
has
回
to
到
suffer.
最后，我们还是回到，哎，原来这个走不通的情况下，那我们
If we cannot do that,
需要
we have
回 globalization。
go back to
这个有时候
globalization.
有些东西永远是我们经过教训，还有每
We
一个
learn some
人都受了这个
lessons,
教训
right?
之后，才吸收这个教训，然
We
后我
take
们
the
才走出
learnings
来。
and
结果
we
实际
may
上也是一个
change
很
the
巨大
track.
的 swing， 是吗？
It
这个
might
第一
be a
点。第
swing.
二点就是我
Secondly,
觉得
mm,
刚才你用这个内卷这个
you
这个
talked
这个
about
词
rat
这个
race.
内卷的词啊是这几年特别风行的，
It
但是
has
内卷
been a
呢不一定是
buzzword.
主动的，
A
有
rat
时候是
race
被
may
动的，
not be
是吗？但是
inactive
还
or
是有一
passive.
些企业，有
You
些
have to
中
do
国的
that.
企业，
Some
它
of
也
the
是
Chinese
不断内
firms
卷，还有它也
are not
是
doing the
希
rat
望
racing.
不断的发挥他们的功能。
They try
我
to
举个
do
例子，最
something
近我也
different.
参与到一家
For
比较
example,
大的企业，它应该
I
是
get
全世界
involved
最大
in
的
a
建筑
big
企业。
enterprise, the biggest construction
我
company.
又是用数字来解释一下。我们在2023年的
In
我们
2023,
所签的合同额是
the contract value
3200亿，
was a 7.32 trillion
但是呢，
RMB.
我也介绍一下，它虽然是在我们国家这个市场里面是
Although
200个，
it's the biggest in China,
肯定是我们这个建筑业首屈一指的。但是我们最近在境外业务新签的合同额，
but recently our overseas contract value reaches
我们实现营业收入超过1000亿。
revenue reaches 130 billion USD.
那你看一下，这么大的企业
For
在
such
我
a
们
size
内地市场
in the
占这么
mainland
大的分
market
量，它还是非常努力的，希
is
望
making
突破
every
刚才所
effort
说的所有的障碍。
to overcome all the
为什么呢？
barriers
是
to
不
go
是他今天出
globalization.
去他就能赚大钱呢？是不是明
Is
年
it
他
because
肯
they
定
can
有
make
很好
money
的这个回报？
to this
我觉得
year?
不一定。
No, not
但是我
necessarily.
们还是需要把
But
我们的战略性的行为
this is
发
a
挥出来，
strategy,
这就是我们 strategic positioning，
strategic
是吗？
positioning.
那为什么要这样做了？我
Why
觉
should
得
we do so?
我Anthony 老兄他是
Anthony
创新科技的大红人，他经
is
常投
a
资。
technology
有一句
guru,
话
investor guru. People talk about patient
培训
capital,
资本
right?
只是
Patient
当我们
capital.
往外走的情况下，
When we go
是不是
abroad,
明年
Are we expecting enough return payback next year, or it's a long journey? We will continue our globalization as long as we seek growth. We need to have enough patience. We talked about the political swings. Actually, the electorate is a swing too. They lack patience. More and more political leaders, therefore, give very short-term policies because they don't care 5 years down the road. They don't know whether 4 years later they will be elected again. If something is not quite beneficial to us today, they may benefit us down the road. If we have more patience, we can achieve win-win-win. To have a clear mind, but we need to be fast in taking actions. Mr. Chen. 3 points, 3 observations. Number 1, where to go, how to do it. Traditional advanced economy like North America and OECD countries like European Union, the traditional destination, we are now suffering from the geopolitical tensions. It's getting hotter. Now there are some new regions which we didn't pay a lot of attention to in the good old days. Today, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Central Asia, Africa, and East Europe, 6 to 7 major markets. They are blue sea. Why should we only focus on the United States or EU? Talking about Southeast Asia, ASEAN countries, their trade volume with China in the first half of 2024 reached $550 billion. China-US trade is only $400 billion for the same period. So Southeast Asia is a great market for China. In addition, the Middle East, we see Saudi Arabia, together with China, set up a huge industry park near the Riyadh airport and Central Asia. We have a lot of initiatives. If you jump out of the box, you see a big world. You see a lot of space, a very spacious market. It depends on your strategy adjustment and redefine your overseas strategy. Shifting from labor-intensive to diversified strategy. So there's a massive market. Don't worry. In Chinese saying that if there's a rain on the east, then it might be sunny on the west. So there's always a silver lining. And secondly, you talked about rat racing. I'm not worried about it. Many companies are trying to do PV in Southeast Asia, and finally they have to compete on prices. I think the industry should have its own rules. PV, wind power, EV, battery. In these sectors, China accounts for 70% of the world capacity. Globalization, it should be happening in order instead of deploying with the traditional philosophy. Instead, you should be for profit. And at the same time, you should bring positive impact over the local market. Establish the business order instead of devastate the market with price competition. So we need to do our homework, especially the young businesses or inexperienced businesses in China. They should really do their homework, improve themselves, and become a true global player in a real sense. Number 3. Because of geopolitical considerations, a company cannot adapt to all the challenges, not only business challenges. We'll have to keep an eye on the existing MOU or regional agreement like RCEP or ASEAN or bilateral agreement. You should not only think about the business, but also you should think like politicians. This is something you have to do. You should take the government perspective, how to adjust and adapt to achieve your competitiveness and sustainability. Thank you. With this ever-changing world, you need to think like politicians about the direction and also think like philosophers, right? Philosophers interpret the world, business entrepreneurs change the world. So all of you mentioned that we go back to the general purpose of your business, right? Always cross the river by filling the stone, and you should you support the globalization. We heard about bilateralism and multilateralism and financial system and settlement, etc. Today we discuss
Mr. Jose also said that there are a lot of growth engine in Asia now, and also you mentioned the infrastructures in Kazakhstan. So when we talk about the payment system, and when we talk about the renminbi internationalization, also today in this session, we also have the former Chongqing city mayor, Mr. Huang Qifan. Let's see his opinion on the renminbi internationalization.
各位来宾、女士们、先生们，很高兴参加国际
Ladies and
金融论
gentlemen,
坛
it's my great
第20
pleasure.
届全球年会。
You have the subtitles.
提出要有序推进人民币国际化。今天我围绕这个主题谈一点我的理解和看法，供大家参考。一，
First of all, the internationalization of the RMB has accelerated in recent years, but still falls short of the matching China's position in the global economy. The internationalization of RMB has made remarkable progress in recent years, particularly despite a widened interest rate gap between the RMB and the US dollar. The comprehensive index of the RMB internationalization has risen instead of declining, showing significant progress in areas such as payment settlement, investment and financing, valuation, and reserve currency status. According to August 2024 data from the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, SWIFT, the RMB's share in global payments reached 4.69%, marking the 10th consecutive month as the world's fourth most used currency for payments. Its share in global trade finance reached 5.95%, making it the second most used currency for trade financing worldwide. More and more overseas market participants are considering using the RMB as a financing currency for trade with China. With the continuous improvement of RMB swap arrangement and a more robust clearing network, an increasing number of Chinese companies are opting to use the RMB for direct investment abroad. Domestically, more industrial and commercial enterprises will also incline to use the RMB as the currency of contract valuation in international trade. In terms of reserve currency, data from the International Monetary Fund shows that by the end of the second quarter of 2024, RMB holdings by global central banks accounted for 2.14% of global reserves. Secondly, advancing the internationalization of RMB helps maintain the stability of global industrial and supply chains. From a global currency structure perspective, currencies can roughly be divided into three categories. The first category is the US dollar, which serves as the world currency. Although the United States accounts for about 25% of global GDP, nearly 50% of international payments are denominated and settled in US dollars, and the share of global foreign currency exchange reserves approached 60%. The second category includes the euro, pound sterling, and yen, whose respective economies have currency market shares that roughly correspond to their weight in the global economy. The third category includes other economies where the status of their currencies is far lower than the GDP shares in the world. China is already the world's second largest economy, with a GDP accounting for 17% of the global total in 2023. Yet, the RMB's role as a settlement currency in global payments is only around 4%, and as a reserve currency, it accounts for just over 2% of global reserve. Going forward, RMB internationalization must at least aim to reach a status similar to that of the euro, pound, and yen, aligning with China's weight in the global economy. It is important to clarify that internationalization of the RMB is a natural choice, stemming from China's increasingly open economic development. It is also an internationalization process aimed at supporting the stability of global industrial and supply chains. As China aims to establish itself as a financial powerhouse, it naturally requires a strong currency. However, this strength must match the stage of China's own economic development and serve the real economy rather than becoming a tool for inflating asset bubbles. Exacting wealth from other nations or imposing sanctions at will. Promoting RMB internationalization through multiple measures and accelerating the development of the offshore RMB market. The decision from the third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee emphasizes advancing high-level financial openness, steadily and prudently promoting RMB internationalization and developing the offshore RMB market. RMB internationalization is a key aspect of higher-level financial openness and can be pursued in the following ways. First, continue promoting RMB-denominated pricing and settlement in China's cross-border trade. China's foreign trade has reached new heights, with imports set to increase further in the future. In 2023, RMB-denominated cross-border payments in goods trade accounted for 24.8% total cross-border payments. Second, continue improving services to provide cross-border RMB settlement for new business models like cross-border e-commerce. In 2023, China's cross-border e-commerce imports and exports total RMB 2.38 trillion, a 15.6% increase, establishing cross-border e-commerce as a new driving force in global trade and a key momentum for China's trade growth. The third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee calls for innovative ways of regulation as well as tax and foreign exchange regulation to create a supportive regulatory environment for new business models. Third, continue expanding openness to provide more convenient investment and financing services for inbound and outbound activities. Over the past 40 years, China has consistently set new records in foreign direct investment, from $2 billion annually in the 1980s to $30 billion in the 1990s. $60 billion annually from 2000 to 2010, $120 billion annually from 2011 to 2020. In recent years, China has become the world's second largest FDI recipient. Looking ahead, China will retain a preferred destination for foreign investment. In this process, foreign capital enterprise entering China can be in foreign currencies or RMB. They can use RMB as the main currency for outbound investment, thus promoting RMB's international presence. This bi-directional flow will foster a healthy dual circulation mechanism for the RMB. Fourth, accelerate the development of the offshore RMB market. Capital account convertibility is a key direction for expanding financial openness. But achieving this goal requires the RMB to attain its due status. Promoting capital account convertibility is integral to expanding financial openness and building a financially strong nation. In recent years, relevant departments have undertaken significant work towards capital account convertibility, achieving notable progress. However, it is important to clarify that while RMB internationalization, capital account convertibility are related, they are not identical. Capital account convertibility does not automatically guarantee that RMB internationalization will follow. Rather, the reverse is true. Only when RMB internationalization reaches a certain level does capital account convertibility become a viable condition. This involves a balance between financial openness and security. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Huang, Mayor Huang. Concrete suggestions. Very relevant to our discussion today. We are in a transitional period. Actually, we're at the crossroads. We have the options in our hands.
Okay, last but not least, I would like to invite all of you to give us a one-sentence summarize for the future cooperation and collaboration, especially we're in the International Finance Forum today. And when it comes to business, we have to talk about finance cooperation. So one sentence summarizing a wish for the future cooperation.
I think starting from the beginning, I think it's this uncertainty is more good opportunities for the cooperation of China with the rest of the world. The internationalization of renminbi is inevitable, but I think it will take deeper financial reforms. And I agree with my colleagues that probably China should focus more on strengthening the soft power globally.
Thank you, Mr. Leong.
Well, I often tell my friends that we are living in an increasingly VUCA world, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. While the increasing VUCA world poses additional risks for everybody, including Chinese corporations, we should all recognize that whenever there are changes, there'll be opportunities. And when you have that much volatility, there will be a lot of changes. Secondly, while it is increasingly VUCA, the trend of the G7 kind of aggregate importance in GDP would continue to strengthen. If we look at, say, 30 years ago, the G7 accounts for about 46% of the world's GDP, and the BRICS as an example, was only 17%. Nowadays, the G7 accounts for only 30%, while the BRICS as a total is 35%. And I continue to see that trend kind of moving in the same directions. So while we talk about the difficulties of the Chinese corporations going overseas, and the so-called foreign investments are more skeptical about coming into China, we should see that the trend will continue, and I continue to believe that there will be continued two-way flows, meaning Chinese corporations going overseas and foreign corporations, including, in my mind, many of the G7 countries as well as the other countries coming into China. So I'm actually very optimistic about the future of kind of both way trade, both ways investment flows between China and the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liang.
第一句话是向我们内地的
First of all, I'd like to say to you that if you want to go overseas, you should have a different mindset. That is very important. The old mindset does not match with the needs of today, because this is an era with so many uncertainties. So we must have a new mindset. So that's the first point. English says trust is good, control is better.
但是
Trust is good, but control is better. How to control? I believe those companies who are going overseas, you need a great team, a law and compliance team, a tax team. Most importantly,
future by sharing the common interests， 就是你能够，我们就我身上变成一个命运共同体，还有利益共同体。
so we should become a community of common destiny.
让他站带头，他才会是你最好的伙伴，但是你
So
代表你
we can become best partners.
做大蛋糕才有蛋糕口。
Thank you. If you make the pie bigger, then you can have your slice.
Global and globalize their businesses, in my view, is not a choice, it's a must for their surviving and the future growth. However, from the financial industry, the market, I have seen this is not only a great opportunity for us to participate, to working with those opportunities going forward, but also the financial market can play a really a partnership, a positive role to working with those business together to grow together in a global market. So it's a win-win situation. Thank you.
Thank you again for all the panelists. A very wonderful discussion, and I would say it's a turning point to actually enhance the Chinese enterprises for their global competitiveness. It's definitely a turning point right now. And thank you again, and thank you all the audience watching for this live broadcast shows. And may the force and evolution be with you. Thank you. Okay, now let's take a group photo, please.
扬帆出海，中国企业的大航海时代环节正式结束。我们将于6点45开始晚宴。